now let's turn our attention to sort of the impact this is going to have. We've talked about whether it's on you wearing smart glasses, but what about you in the workforce? A new study from Stanford showing that AI is disrupting that workforce, making it harder for entry-level workers to find jobs in fields like software development, like customer service. Joining us now to discuss, Dr. Kelly Monahan, Managing Director at Upwork Research Institute. You lead the research on remote workforce strategies. It's so interesting when you talk to CEOs at the moment. We're not just hearing about generative AI being offered in their applications and in their offerings to customers, but it's how they're adopting it in their own workforce and how they're trying to basically minimize future hiring potentially, or indeed enhance productivity. What are you seeing, Kelly?
I think the one thing that I'm seeing a lot is I think AI is being used as a scapegoat to explain a much broader labor trend that has actually existed over the last couple of years. I think AI is actually an accelerant right now to some of that pullback that we're seeing, especially in software and tech. And I saw the Stanford study, and I think the one thing that's really important to keep in context is the software and tech industry is such a small sliver of the actual labor market. If we look more broadly, we heard the gentleman before, the restaurant industry, hospitality is actually in a labor shortage. And so I think we're over-focused right now, to be honest with you, on the impact it's having on tech. And it's going to impact tech first, just like robotic process automation did, just like the internet boom did. We're going to see those entry-level roles begin to be disrupted and then over time evolve, because the technology is going to actually make that bar much higher to go into and be able to enter those professions.
Okay, so at the moment in the here and now, we talk a lot about disruption within customer services. We even hear about those in coding, and time again, Sam Altman saying, look, GPT-5 is really great if you want it to code alongside you. But where next? What is the next area of concern, or indeed of uplift, and indeed into your network's name, Upwork?
Yes, absolutely. So I think if we look only at the full-time labor markets, we may be missing the broader trend that's happening here. So part of the longer-term trend that we've seen in the labor markets is that companies right now, in the midst of much uncertainty, need agility, and they need to really be able to hedge their bets. And one of the best ways to do that is actually begin to look at alternative talent pools, the freelancer market. And so what's interesting to me is I look at our data on the freelancer platform globally, we're actually up right now in customer service. We see greater demand in virtual assistants as well. And so what I think is happening to some degree is, as AI is putting some pressure, companies are also beginning to look at the freelancer labor pool as a way to start to build this AI human collaboration, to really begin to hedge their bets and navigate this uncertainty.
That raises the question, though, about the idea of their longer-term commitment to this. When you look at that type of utilization on your platform, am I reading too much into that to say that some of these companies are maybe still a little bit on the fence? Is this just kind of dipping their toe into the water and hoping that once they actually do see a return, maybe they look for something more permanent?
I think it's a great question. And I think time will tell, to be honest with you, of where we see an actual rebound. My sense, though, is after looking at the organizational design and labor markets, I think we're actually going through a pretty profound structural shift. We know in many ways we've seen some of the softening occur, like we've mentioned in software and tech, and like the Stanford study found. But I think we actually have greater demand emerging, whether that's coming from the content creator economy is actually feeling a lot of this growth, and they're very bullish on using AI tools. And I would just like to say, too, as we think about our market, we serve a lot of the small, medium-sized businesses, and we actually see them pretty bullish going into Q4. Their number one concern right now, we do a lot of survey work to understand this, is talent acquisition and talent retention. And so I think it really depends. It's so contextual right now, and I think we have to be careful to overgeneralize the impact AI is actually having.
What's the expertise of the folks coming to the platform right now? And I ask that, I know AI itself isn't new, but certainly in the public conscious, it's relatively new. And I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there would be a somewhat finite supply of highly skilled, highly experienced people in this space.
Yeah. So one of the very first things that we're seeing continue to grow, to be honest with you, is machine learning. And as you mentioned, machine learning has been around for a while. So we have very highly skilled populations that have been on our platform for a while, choosing to work differently because they've been skilled. And I think one of the things that most people don't realize is our labor market and really freelancer markets that are servicing skilled work actually are 2 times more likely to have a post-grad degree. And so in some ways, if you're highly skilled today, you're able to work alongside of AI, you've got a post-grad degree, you may be choosing flexibility and the ability to do that and work on your own schedule, and actually in many ways probably earn more wages as you're able to command your own rate. And so I think there's a shift going on. Again, I think there's optionality and choice happening for those that are highly skilled. We know 52% of Gen Z, as an example, is choosing to engage in some level of freelancing. 1 in 4 Americans right now are actually engaged in some level of freelancing. And so I do think this is a broader trend and signal we have to pay attention to. Again, time will tell if we have a rebound in some of the entry level full time hiring, which I don't think is a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think these could be two complementary parallel paths that would be very good for the economy.
Kelly, I want to bring it down to the here and now, which is we're all obsessing about NVIDIA's numbers. We're obsessing about whether or not there is hype built into the application of the compute that NVIDIA provides. From your perspective, is there hype built into this labor market?
It's a great question. And if I'm going to be honest with you and frank, I do think there's a bit hype. If we actually look at the numbers and we look at the labor market, we've seen small slivers of some structural changes and growth directly attributed to AI. I think this is going to be a long-term transformation. It's going to take time for organizations, just like the MIT study that came out, showing that many organizations are struggling to figure out where to fit AI and whether or not they're getting the ROI from it. I do think this is going to materialize and create new value creation. I think the opportunity here isn't just efficiency and productivity. I think the real challenge here is how do we actually create new value from this technology? I think that's where a lot of leaders' heads are at. And that's not going to be a today or tomorrow fix. That's going to be a longer term horizon before we actually begin to see that full labor market shift and evolution and ultimately that new value companies can create.
Dr. Kelly Monahan, Managing Director over at the Upwork Research Institute. A great look here at the job market right now when it comes to the AI trade. And speaking of that trade, NVIDIA shares down here in the after hours.